Hey, good morning, making moves. What's going on out there? It's time for hold on, Tim and Nicole at 10
Surprise.
on Tuesday. What's going on, Nicole?
I am doing good. I am recovering right now from the conference this weekend. Totally lost my voice. And yeah, I guess I realized how much I actually talk. So that may or may not be a good thing. I'm not really sure.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's funny. People talk about going to these events, and we all talk about like getting in the room and everything. And
Yeah.
it's like I do the same thing. I come back from these events, I'm like, my throat hurts. I got a headache. I'm completely dehydrated.
Yeah.
Um, and man, and you and I both know, and Dennis, I'm sorry I'm gonna do this to you, man. Dennis Polson, we both know Dennis, man. Dennis,
Yeah.
we were down at Jake and Gino in Orlando, MM5, I guess. And
Yeah.
man, like the first night, Dennis's voice was gone. And we still had 2 days to go. I felt so bad for him.
Oh, no. That was
Yeah.
pretty much, yeah, actually last year, Nicole Pendergrass, who, we run in similar circles, she lost her voice on the Friday as well last year. So we switched places this year, apparently.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it sounds like I don't know. Hey guys, so like Nicole and I were chatting before this, and Nicole, sounds like maybe you guys like went all out first night. They have a good catch up and everything, so maybe that had something to do with it.
Yeah, we had a good time for sure. We found a new spot in Katy and ventured over there, and then came back to the house and did what girls do, right? You catch up when you don't have your kids, and before you know it, it's 2 in the morning, and you're like, "Oh crap! I have a conference tomorrow. I gotta get up." And then you wake up to this. Yeah.
Sorry, not having the kids reminded me because somebody asked me what I was doing today, but I forgot to say this, guys. I promise, guys, we'll get to like something constructive here in a second. But hey, happy Valentine's Day. Um,
Thank you, thank you.
and
Happy Valentine's Day.
thanks. And where I was going with that is somebody was like, "Oh, what are you guys doing today?" And I'm like, "Oh, we got like a crazy, crazy Valentine's Day. We're gonna work, and then and then we're gonna like slam down some food right before my wife and I run out the door and take our daughter to soccer practice." And I was like, yeah, when you start doing this like grown up thing and parenting, and like Valentine's days start to look very different.
Yes. Yeah, they sure do. They sure do. It was very much like gifts to the kids and stuff this morning. Justin and I exchanged a little something, but then it was
Yeah,
like, all right, off to regular land. Gotta go drop the
yeah,
kids off. And yeah,
yeah.
here we are.
My, I hate to say it. My wife and I were out working out this morning, and she just looks over and she goes, "Happy Valentine's Day." And I have to admit, I was like, "Oh, it is,
Oh,
isn't it?" It is
that's so
Valentine's
bad.
Day. Hey,
Oh, for
speaking
sure.
of, I think you might know this person. So,
Oh, I do. Hi, mom.
hey,
Hi.
so hey, Kathy, great to see you. Hey guys, so listen, Nicole and I were both kind of traveling around separate events, but similar time frames. Mine was at the beginning of the week. I believe MFIN was towards the end of the week, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Over the
Saturday.
weekend.
Hmm.
Um, and so we just thought it'd be a good time to kind of like get together and talk about like maybe what we're hearing in these rooms that we talk about. Um, because it's a really good opportunity to get out there and kind of get the pulse of what other people doing this thing are feeling and what they're seeing as well. So Nicole, I'll start real quick. So I went to IMN in Miami, and for those of you who don't know, IMN just stands for Information Management Network, I believe. And they're a large group highly focused on real estate, but they focus across the spectrum of real estate, single family rental, Airbnbs. And then, yes, I'm reading this off their website right now. Um, Real estate mezzanine financing, middle market operators such as myself and Nicole, who own properties within a certain range. And they hold events all over the country. I mean, I'm looking at their event page. It's like, hey, in fact, they got something going on today. Um, March 2nd, March 7th, March 8th, the 16th. I mean, constantly something going on.
Yeah.
They have another event for what I went to in Miami, the middle market stuff. They have another one of those In Georgia, in Atlanta, June's 1st and 2nd. If you are a multifamily operator, I highly recommend you go. It was very good to be around some of the other folks in the room who honestly are doing what we do. And then kind of getting their perspective, especially right now, guys, like with so much uncertainty going on out there and all the different things, like jobs are up, jobs are down, the Fed's raising rates, but they're falling, all these different things and all this uncertainty. So it's really good time to be in the rooms. Nicole, I'll give you a second to talk about MFIN, and then we'll kind of get to it.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, MFIN is put on actually by Disrupt Equity, and they host them in different parts of the states. So just happened to be every February they host the MFIN in Houston, and that stands for Multifamily Investor Network Conference. And yeah, so it was great. It's usually on a Saturday, just a 1 day, full day event, and then they do that kind of fun networking and stuff after. But it's really just an event where you just talk about what we're seeing in the market, kind of like, I guess, the economic climate of multifamily. We did talk a little bit about actually triple net lease came up, and there was a couple of syndicators there that were in self-storage. So chat about that. There was a broker panel as well in different parts they covered all 4 metros in Texas. And so it was nice to kind of hear about the cap rates and what they're seeing as kind of trending right now. And yeah, so good time to just get out there and network.
Yeah. And guys, one of the things that I like about them, I went to MFIN last year down in Houston. One of the things I like about these is they're not sales pitches. They're not trying to be there selling you something. It's really informational. Like Nicole's talking about MFIN, they put panels up there, and they're not up there with like 5 seconds of information and then 30 minutes of like buy my something, right? It's real good discussions. IMN was the same way. Again, it was a lot of panels, a lot of people there talking about, what they're doing, how they're adjusting for the market right now, what they think is coming later this year. So those are really, really good rooms to be in. And the one other thing I like about them too is, like Nicole said, they're like a day and a half. IMN was a Monday and a Tuesday. It was all day Monday, 8 to like 6 something, and then networking afterwards. And then Tuesday was like, there was a discussion panel, I think at 8 a.m. And then it went to like 1 and it was done. MFIN, full day, very, very, very jam-packed day. But the beautiful thing about this is, if you're like me, and Nicole, you're probably the same way, it's hard for me to step away from the day-to-day operations of my business for more than like 24 hours.
Yeah.
And those are done and they're jam-packed, but it's just like a day and a half. It's pretty easy for me to say, okay, I can make time for this, right?
One thing too that they did that was new this year that I thought was kind of cool was they did Ignite presentations, where they had I think it was a series of maybe 12 people that went up there, and they were talking about triple net, self-storage, so different asset types, I guess. And then there was a couple of guys that were up there for construction, and what they did was they gave them 15 seconds per slide. So they only had just a set amount of time, and they were just banging them out basically. Yeah. So it was just a lot of information, very quick, and they ended up getting through like a ton of people that way. And I thought that was kind of cool to see.
Yeah, that's really cool. And speaking of, I feel like we're sitting here like promoting these things. Like, hey, I am in. I know I'm not like like on your sales board or whatever, but or an affiliate, but I will take a free pass for this promotion. So I'll see you in Atlanta.
Yeah, I'll take a free one too. I think the next one's in San Francisco next month.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah, I'm going.
Yeah, there's an excuse for sure, right? Like, let me get out to San Francisco and for work, right?
Yeah.
But so Nicole, what did you hear while you were there? Is there anything there that kind of like was an aha, or I hadn't thought of this, or interesting that you feel this way, based on the market? I mean, what were you hearing?
Yeah, so there was a couple of things. For sure, one that kind of like, just, I guess, solidified what we were thinking in terms of adjusting strategy in the value add arena, I guess you could say, is like construction, right? Like there's still supply issues. There's a huge lack of skilled labor workers that they're still trying to work around. But so it's causing them to be able to pivot in different kinds of ways. So one of the guys that leads a construction company was talking about how they had to pivot due to materials and labor issues, that they had actually were doing a student housing development, and they had a concrete foundation, and they ended up because of the materials issues, they actually pivoted from concrete to steel, and they ended up doing like steel framing. So that ended up saving them. I think he said like over $1 million, like $1.5 million on the whole project. Plus, it allowed for them to be able to pivot during those times where they had issues with materials as well as labor. So that was one kind of way that I saw that people were pivoting. Value add is no longer just renovations, right? You hear that kind of buzzword and everyone automatically thinks, oh, value add is like just renos. We're going to go in and we're going to, have our CapEx budget and we're going to go and do this, X, Y, and Z. But I had learned that another piece of value add is, and I kind of knew this before about like the toilets, but like changing out things that are a little bit inefficient to be able to save on your expenses. And a new one that I hadn't heard about was the flood. So as I was listening to that, I was messaging you, but basically there's a company now that, and I'm sure they've been around for a while, but they actually help with changing flood designations. And so it ends up helping save on insurance costs. Now it's up to you whether or not you want to, be safe and continue to add in or pay for insurance. But I guess the real value on the back end was once you are trying to sell that property, if that property is no longer in a flood zone, you don't have the lender required, the insurance required for having flood insurance, and it increases the value that way. So there was like different little things that I'd seen, and I'd say that probably the biggest takeaway in terms of like multifamily overall for the market was that it'll start to really heat up in Q3 and probably Q4, where we're going to start to see a lot of good deals coming across.
Yeah. So a couple things. So Nicole and I, two separate events, one in Houston, one in Miami, heard some of the same things from completely different people. And a lot of the guys at the event I was at were also the previous week at the huge one, NFC or something like that.
Oh yeah, NFFC or something.
Yeah, in Vegas.
Yeah.
And their feedback was that everything that you just said and everything that I'm saying now was very prevalent there as well. So it's interesting how we're all dispersed all over the country. We're all doing similar to different things, and we all kind of have the same feeling. Because here's the truth: like if you're plugged into what's going on in the market, you have a general idea of what you think is going to happen. We're all looking at the same metrics. We're all looking at the same data. And we're all reading the same reports, and, we're just kind of putting our own interpretations on them. I'm doing my analysis, Nicole's doing hers, and then we're kind of applying it to our markets. But in general, the thought in the room was exactly what Nicole just said, even in Miami, which was, hey, we're going through a bit of uncertainty here in the first half of 2023, but we think the second half of 2023, we're going to see transaction volumes pick up. We're going to see kind of some deals come across. And even when I talk to lenders and lending brokers, what I'm hearing is that lending volume is going to pick up in the second half of 2023 as well. And that may translate into some more favorable rates later this year. So that's some things we're hearing. Now, the one pivot I did here in Miami, and I tend to agree, is that we're not going to see the defaults that everybody thought we were going to see. And that seems to be pretty prevalent thinking across the industry right now is, going in the middle of 2022, Q3 of 2022, everybody was like, there is a ton of defaults coming in 2023 and 24. And the overall feeling or sentiment in the room seems to be that I'm not sure that's going to happen
Right.
for a number of reasons. One of them being lending. Lenders are working with people right now. They're
Yep.
saying, I don't want your property back. I don't want you to turn it in. I'm going to extend you. Or what do you need from us to help you get through this time? Lenders
Yeah.
are being much more kind of honestly partners
Yeah.
in the whole process right now. So the thinking is that that's going to help, right? That's going to help stave off this like glut of defaults that people thought we were going to see. I'm not saying we're not going to see some of them. I think we will,
Right.
but I don't think it's going to be the flood that people thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
Is that what you were hearing while you were there as well?
Yeah, so that definitely that, and then also the fact that agencies coming back, Fannie Mae and Freddie
Hmm.
Mac have some new kind of products where the interest rates are quite favorable as well as the terms, and yeah,
Yeah.
and so that's a big one that really seems to be kind of taking the lead right now in terms of structuring debt and lending options. So that
Yeah.
was kind of neat to see, and. Yeah, I mean, very similar to kind of what you had heard as well.
Yeah, and fun. It's interesting that you mentioned the Fannie Freddie stuff. My partners and I have a property that we were going to try to refinance later this year. We were going to hold out till later this year. We don't really need to do anything until Q3, early Q4.
Yeah.
So we were going to kind of ride it out. But when Freddie made their announcement, what I guess about 2 weeks ago now, they came out with some pretty favorable terms. We looked at it and said, I like those. They fit our underwriting that we underwrote to 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So let's go get it. We were like, let's go do that because I mean, things may be better in Q3, Q4, but I know that's what's available right now. So let me go ahead and get that. It fits our underwriting and let's move forward with it. And, you're starting to see some of that, right? You're starting to
Yeah.
see some folks say, oh, like I'll take that.
Another thing that we've actually been seeing as well is loan assumptions, right?
Oh
Because
yeah.
of all of the very low interest rates that are out there. Was networking with a friend and fellow syndicator as well, and they are assuming a loan right now. It's a HUD assumption, and they're assuming it at 3.5%, and they've got more than, I think it was a 30-year loan. They've got more than 20 years left on it. So, like, you're starting to see things like that, and sellers knowing that, hey, interest rates like kind of stink right now. Like some of the lending options aren't that great as we're starting to see it, pivot. But that kind of opens up the door for some either them holding longer, and that's why we're not going to see the deals and stuff right now, or the creative financing,
Yeah.
seller financing. So
Yeah, so two things on that because it's funny how quickly things change.
yeah.
I looked I looked at loan assumption deals all through the end of 2021, all through the first half of 2022, and even to the point where our friend Vitali, who's not here today, he's in Puerto Rico, guys, so don't feel bad for him.
Lucky guy.
Yeah, uh, I've seen some pictures. I don't feel bad for him. Um, uh, so, I would bring those and he'd be like, man, I do not want to look at another loan assumption deal. Because the downside to it was at the time when rates were low was there was no real benefit to the rates.
Yeah.
And then a lot of times on loan assumptions, you have to come with more cash because they've added more value and you have to come with, the difference between the loan and the actual value of the property. So, the cash on cash was awful. It drove the IRR down, all these other things. The equity multiple is impossible.
Yeah.
But now things are looking way different. Like I have people reaching out I'm looking at selling something right now. And the first question I get asked was, can I assume your loan?
Hmm.
Can you reach out to your bank and ask if I can assume the loan? And I'm
Yeah.
like, wow, how quickly things change. And you're seeing things pitched where it's like loan assumption available.
Yeah.
And these make really good deals. So hey, listen, if you saw a loan assumption last year that you just didn't want, maybe follow back up, see if that property's still available because those loan assumptions are a selling point right now.
They
Um,
are, yeah. Any
yeah,
any way that you can take advantage of some of the benefits that we had, a couple
yeah.
years ago or year or so ago.
Yeah, for sure. And then, one of the other things that, we kind of heard, kind of going into IMN was you're talking about back to what you said about value add, because value add, it's a very broad term, right?
Yeah.
It literally means anything you can do to the property to add value.
Yeah.
And that can be renovations, management, increasing rents, um, uh,
Reducing
re-
expenses.
reducing expenses, you name it.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we're hearing right now, I never thought of this because Nicole, you and I are in on a deal where insurance is killing us right now, right?
Yeah.
We have a deal where insurance is just killing us. And because some of that you can't plan for, right? You don't know what the hurricane season is going to look like. You don't know when insurers are going to be like, we're done with the hurricanes, we're out.
Yeah.
And they pull out of the market, and the two or three providers that are left decide, hey, it's just the three of us. We can charge what we want.
Yep.
And we
Yeah. You see
will.
that all the time.
Yeah. So something, similar thing happened in Florida, I don't know, like 10, 12, 15 years ago. Insurance providers pulled out. Florida insurance rates went through the roof. A few years later, providers started coming back in, rates started to settle back down. So the thinking is that in some of these states where that's happened recently, insurance has gone through the roof, that if you can hold through this time, it will settle. Providers will come back, those rates will drop. But some of the folks there were like, I think it's a buying opportunity right now because there are people there who didn't expect for their insurance to triple, right?
Yeah.
Or quadruple. I heard somebody the other day said it went up 4.5 times on the renewal.
That's crazy.
And so if you think about that, it's killing his expenses. He might need to get out. So somebody's like, I can go buy on the NOI today based off that ridiculously high insurance rate, and I'll just wait. And in 5 years, when that insurance rates drop, my NOI is going to do much better because I've gotten that insurance out of there. I just created value, right?
Yeah.
I just created value because I waited out the insurance.
Yeah.
And it's like, holy cow. Well, there's a business plan right there.
Right. And most people would not think that, right? Because again, value adds like this huge buzzword. And like you said, like it could mean so many different things. And the last thing that you think of, when you hear that word is like, oh, we could simply change out toilets, or we could, wait out our insurance for it to go down. Because that's a huge thing that we've seen, as well as the coastal insurance rates have been ridiculous. Even in Houston, like for our properties there, the rate of insurance that we're paying there is almost what we pay in Katy, and it's nowhere near the same type of property, like at all. So and there's also been a lot of insurance carriers that just simply are not in Houston any longer because of Hurricane Harvey and the floods and stuff. So
yeah, it's just crazy. Like so that's another benefit of going to these events, right? Is you start to hear people, they think about things a different way. They look at things a different way. And I'll be honest, like, Tim and I went into that event thinking, hey, let's figure out a way to sell this property. Right. But as we're sitting there talking, one of the guys was like, you can certainly do that. He goes, but I think you're leaving millions on the table. He goes, I think you're leaving millions on the table. And he was like, is it cash flowing? We're like, yeah, it's paying for itself and producing a little bit. And he was like, even at the higher rate? Yes, correct. 100%. He's like, so ride it out. He's like, wait it out. Yeah. He's like, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, there's going to be millions there that if you sell it today, the next guy's going to get it for your work. He's like, you guys did the work. Yeah. He's like, just ride it out. And sometimes it's helpful to hear that, right? It's like, oh man, it's painful today, but hey man, one of the things I learned back in 08 and 09 was when things don't pay for themselves and you're paying for them, that's painful. When they're paying for themselves, even if they're not producing a return at the moment, that's okay.
Right.
Yeah. And in fact, I don't mean to like move on to a different subject here, but kind of in the same vein is one of the things I was talking to somebody about is I have a ground up development opportunity that I'm looking at. And I didn't even think about it this way. but basically there's structures on the property now, and it's 2 different lots, and I can pay for both through the construction period if I just cash flow one while
Okay.
one lot is under development.
Yeah.
And one of the guys looks at me and he goes, "Man, it's like a land bank that pays for itself through construction." I was
Yeah.
like, "Oh, yeah, I hadn't thought of it that way." I just looked at it and said, "I can do this and never have to come out of pocket because it pays. The one lot pays for the other and then vice versa."
Yeah.
And he's like, "Dude, that's brilliant." He's like, you should be," he goes, "You need to do like 10 of those." And I'm like, "Yes, I should. That is a
Yeah.
great idea."
You somehow managed to get an infinite banking, like an IBC thing going on with this
Yeah.
opportunity. So lending to
Yeah.
yourself, right?
So it's funny how you go to an event like that and you're like, and I'm looking at this as like, oh, it's just something that's a one-off. I'll do it one time. And he's like,
Yeah.
"No, those are beautiful." He goes, "You should go look for like 10 of those." And I'm like, I think I might do that.
Yeah. And that's the thing, like that's the value in a lot of these conferences, right? Is that yes, you are learning and you're gaining like different, different knowledge and whatnot. You're expanding your brain capacity, I guess you could say, but you're also networking and you're chatting with other people that can give you different perspectives on your deals right now or future deals or what they're working on and kind of how they're thinking about that. So you make a great point is that that is the value in these conferences. You go, sure, it's great to meet new people and network with old friends and stuff like that, but the value is in shared knowledge and different perspectives shared.
Yeah, agreed 100%. And guys, one thing I will tell you too is when you're in these conferences, they'll have little offshoots or little rooms off to the side and stuff. Don't hesitate, especially if somebody says, "Hey, do you want to join us for this little roundtable discussion?" Do that.
Yeah.
Go there because those are you get 10 or 15 guys doing what you do in different markets, and some have been doing it for 20 years, some have been doing it for 2, and they're all shooting ideas off each other. Oh my God, we had Tuesday morning, we had a roundtable discussion. There were probably about 30 of us in the room
Yeah.
from first year into 20 plus years.
Wow.
And there were operators, there were fund managers, there were investors. We were all sitting there just chatting, and the ideas that just kind of came out. Um, and that was priceless. That was worth every bit I spent to go down there and be there.
Yeah.
Because you come out of there with ideas, you come out of there with warnings, knowing what to look out for. And then quite frankly, guys, you come out of there with like new connections. I made 2 new connections in that room that morning that I have since followed up with, and I'm going to have dinner with one, and I have a
Nice.
follow-up phone call with the other this week. And these are just really, really good operators with tons of experience, way more experience than I have.
Mhm.
And that's you can't make that kind of connection like this, honestly.
Right.
Like you
Yeah.
need to be there face to face.
Yeah.
Um,
That's another thing too, is that really like relationships are huge in real estate, right? Like it's not an industry that you can go at it alone. Sure, you might, buy some single families and things like that on your own, but when you get into commercial real estate and like larger deal sizes, like these are taken down as a team. And a
yeah,
lot of you how many times have you heard when you've been to a conference, "Oh, I want to do a deal with you. I want to partner with you. Like, I'm looking at this, like let's chat about it." And you're
yeah,
like you get kind of do that kind of slow walk back because you realize that hey, this isn't like a 1 year hold or a 2 year hold. Like you're in this for 5, 7, 10 plus years with this person that you've just
yeah,
met. It's like
yeah,
maybe we should have, maybe we should what this guy that I know, he was like, yeah, this was kind of lunch, but maybe we should do like dinner a few times so that we can like, get a chance to know each other. But that I think that that's a big problem that we see in the industry is that people like to just kind of partner with maybe strangers sometimes.
yeah,
But these networking opportunities allow you to see a lot of the same people and you're back in front of them and you're fostering that relationship for future deals. So maybe
yeah,
like this one doesn't work and the next one doesn't work, but maybe your third or fourth deal down the line this year, I might be into that, or that's something that's a little bit closer to us partnering on because you develop that relationship. It takes
yeah.
time. So
Yep. Really, really good point. And I'll even share like, hey, Vitaly and I mean, we talked quite a bit before we ever met in person. We met in person, and then it was quite some time after that before we decided to even remotely do a deal together.
Yeah.
And in fact, from the time we met for coffee to the time we actually did a deal together, a lot of our conversations were I was talking about deals I was doing with other people. He was asking me questions about deals he was thinking about doing with other people.
Yeah.
And, over that time, we finally got to a point where it was like, hey, you want to like maybe look at something? And truly the way it started was I had a deal. I could not figure out how to implement this, how to put this one piece of the deal together as how to get it in there and get it on paper. And I sat down with him. I was like, hey man, you told me you're really good with underwriting. Let's get on a call. And can you help me figure out how to get this into numbers on paper?
Right.
And he did. We got on a Zoom call. We went through it. And then the next thing I was like, hey, you made it work. You did the underwriting. So now you're in. Like, if you want it, here's 5% for helping me get this nailed down.
Yeah.
But that took time. That took months, lots of months. But one other thing I kind of wanted to say, and I know we got to wrap up here, guys. I know we talked about the benefit of being in the room, but kind of some of the key takeaways that Nicole heard and I heard was, lending's going to pick back up. They think rates are going to stabilize towards later into the year, Q3, Q4. Don't see the huge glut of fire sales or huge defaults that we thought might happen. It's not that they're not going to happen. It's just not going to be as prevalent as we thought. Lenders are working with people. They're trying to help them keep their properties. They're trying to help them manage through this period. And then the other key piece was that we're starting to see seller expectations level out.
Right.
And the one other thing I did want to say, everybody's like concerned with the market and everything, but one of the most common sentiments that I heard in the room, and I don't know what you heard on this, was a lot of guys are welcoming this. A lot of guys are welcoming this kind of adjustment, this settling down, if you will.
Yeah.
Because things have been so hot, so out of this world. So rules of thumb didn't apply. The basics, the fundamentals just went out the window for a couple of years. A lot of guys are saying, I like what's happening. I want things to settle. I want seller expectations to be more in line with buyer expectations. Let's get back to some common sense with cap rates and how they're impacted by lending rates, borrowing rates. A lot of guys are like, this is what we should be doing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
no, I completely agree. That we actually, the broker panel was very heavily talking about that as well. They're like, I can't sell at the prices that we were able to sell, last year and the year before. It's not happening. So I think they're also starting to come to terms with not being able to, pitch deals that really, like you said, the rules of thumb were out of the window. Like doesn't make sense. They're starting to, talk with their sellers on that as well. Like, hey, so that's good. It's good for us buyers, right?
Yeah, it's good for us buyers, and honestly, guys, it's good for us operators. Because one of the things that we talked about, I think Vitaly and I talked about this a couple of weeks ago, was there's rules of thumb, and the rules of thumb exist for a reason, right? They're decades of doing this built into, hey, here's guidance in how you underwrite, and no matter what you were underwriting to, it just all went out the window for a couple of years there.
Yeah.
And then on the other side, where you got hurt, was that rates escalated much faster than rules of thumb would have told you to expect. Right. So people got hurt. People are getting hurt. So a lot of guys are saying, this is good, right? This is good. Let's get back to where I know how to underwrite things. I know what I should expect. And as long as I'm conservative based on the rules of thumb, if I beat it, great. Otherwise, I'm safe. Yeah. And that's honestly what this has been for the longest time. And this goes back to the whole idea that real estate has traditionally been a long-term play. Yeah. And we're getting back to that. People are starting to say, hey, let's do less flipping and, buy something and sell it 6 months later for 20% more, 30% more.
Yeah.
And let's get back to what real estate has traditionally been, which is a steady return, wealth generating asset over a long-term period.
Yeah.
And you know, I for one like that.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. I think that's a really great strategy, and syndication offers that. You know, larger multifamily deals offer that. Commercial real estate offers that. It's just a different type of strategy than, you know, you're wholesaling, you're flipping, and in a different world, right? So
So all right, hey guys, appreciate it. We're actually overtime. Look at that.
I told you I talk a lot. It's
That's okay.
here and on video today.
That's okay, man. I always enjoy our chats. But guys, thanks for tuning in. Hope you found this helpful. And we'll be talking to you next week. So have a great week, folks.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Tim.
Thanks, Nicole.